and hopefully you all understand where it's located. It's sort of across from the rec center out on East State Street, behind the Bed Warehouse and I forget the other commercial establishment that is actually confronting on East State Street.
Donato's Pizza?
It's closer to town than that.
The Auto Zone or Auto
Yeah.
Zone?
Blue Napa Auto Parts.
Okay? This project that we have here is designed as a four-unit apartment building. The total number of apartments or beds are 10. 2 3-bedrooms and 2 2-bedrooms are intended. The configuration of the apartments is a townhouse, so that we can have on these townhouses one accessible bedroom for 2 apartments to get our required handicap accessibility.
Can you
So-
say that sentence again?
I didn't write it that way. We're going to have two of the apartments are going to have ground floor bedrooms. So the 3-bedroom apartments actually have 1 bedroom that is located on the ground floor. The 2-bedroom apartments are the traditional townhouse configuration with both bedrooms on the 2nd floor. The facility has been designed to be affordable housing. The project is financed through Integrated Services of Appalachian, Ohio, and it's intended to be managed by the Athens Metropolitan Housing Authority. The site plan shows the arrangement of parking and related structures. I believe you've got those there. We've already built the parking lot. It has actually been associated with an addition we have added to Integrated Services across the street, because that addition required more parking for that business. So this parking that we have at 10 Graham is not only dedicated to the parking for these apartments, but also we have deed-restricted parking based on the last appeal we got here for the business at 11 Graham, Integrated Services. The lot has 14 parking spaces, of which 6 has been dedicated to the business and 8 are dedicated to this project at this time. I think, as was indicated, the board is reviewing this project for 2 reasons. Number 1, the code does not allow residential occupancies on the first floor of a B3 zone. And number 2, the total number of parking spaces provided is 8, where the number required by code is 10. The following is intended to provide justification for this variance based on our findings. General purpose and intent of the code. This property is located in a transition area between the business district of East State Street and adjacent residential neighborhoods. The adjacent residential zone is a R2, not an R1. This zone can support single-family as well as 2-family dwellings. The B3 zone, which we are in, allows apartments and business use. The clause in the code, which John referred to earlier, refers to no residential use on the first floor, and it is referenced actually back to a B2D section of the code, or zone, which is an uptown business district, which makes perfect sense in an uptown business district, but not necessarily for all B3 zones that are located throughout the community. Would this project be injurious to the area or detrimental to the public welfare? The project would benefit, in our opinion, this area and is appropriate for this location. Residential development adjacent to this commercial district will provide advantages to both districts. The services and activities will provide an attraction for both the residents and provide easy access to commercial districts that are adjacent to it. The former use of this property was a single-family dwelling. We don't really know, I don't know exactly either when that dwelling was constructed on the site, but it was a modular home. By permitting residential activities on the first floor, you are not actually changing the use that was previously had, that was activities that went on this piece of property. Conditions related to the land which require a variance. The primary focus of most commercial activities is on East State Street itself. This property does not have direct exposure to East State Street. This further reinforces the transitional nature, I think, of this property. The zoning map, which I have included with your package there, shows the irregular separation between the B3 zone and the R2 zone on the north side of East State Street. This is likely due to existing property use whenever the zoning was originally intended, but it's a little bit unusual, in my opinion, from all the other zoning delineations that I've seen in the city of Athens. This makes the transition area between the residential and the commercial less abrupt. And this property is in one of those transitional uses. Circumstances do not apply in general to other properties in this zone. The majority use of the zone is for commercial activities on East State Street. Almost always the ground floor is used for those commercial activities. Residential use is limited. Allowing this property to use the ground floor for residential use would be an appropriate exception because of the relationship that it has in this zone, in this transitional area that it's in, with residential surrounding it. Reasonable use of the property will be denied without a variance from the zoning code. The project could be modified to meet the standards of the code. However, the solutions that would be available would not be in the best interests of the neighborhood or the community. An additional story for an activity such as parking could be incorporated in the project, but this would make the structure much larger. The zone allows for residential use of the property, and this project does not involve a non-conforming use. So what we're asking to do here is not non-conforming in terms of the use of the site. It's, however, non-conforming in the fact that the use would have to be elevated a story above grade. Strict enforcement of the code would create a hardship. Additional features and costs will need to be included in the scope of the work to conform to the requirements of the code. Handicap accessibility is an important feature of this project and the intended use for the people that are going to be living here. The design has 2 units with accessible bedrooms, as I indicated earlier. If the structure needs to be elevated, provisions for access to the first floor will have to be provided as well, which will make it more difficult. The variance would be minimum required for the reasonable use of the land. The previous use of the property was residential, and it was on the first floor. All the wall controls for the project will conform to the zoning code. All our setbacks, all our area height requirements, site coverage, lot coverage will conform to the B3 zone. We're not asking for any variances in terms of the size of this building. The lot would be a residential occupancy as it has been in the past. This request is not for a non-conforming use or encroachment over required setbacks. The proposed design has been developed with scale and concern. The second floor, as you can see from the photograph here, we're trying to make this transition between, or not the drawing, between the residential areas and the commercial areas as smooth as possible. What we've done with this particular plan that we've developed is I've used the attic space as the second floor of this building, rather than just making it a 2-story building, which would be way more out of character with the nature of the residential areas that are beside it. Trying to keep the profile of the structure as easy as I could in terms of this transition from the residential to the business zone. Site development was also organized, hopefully, to help this particular project fit better into the neighborhood. There's a parking lot on one side of it, there's a parking lot on another side of it, so we've tried to space things out to make the density of the buildings in this area of the transition as smooth as possible. The The project will not impair the supply of light or air to the adjacent properties. If possible, solar panels are actually to be incorporated in the scope of the project, just as we have done with the integrated services office structure across the street. And also, the project will not create a public safety problem or impair the property values of the neighborhood. Special privileges would not be provided for this project. The property in these transitional areas should be reviewed and modifications to the code granted to accommodate sensible development. Because there is no abrupt distinction between this zone and the R2 and then the further R1, trying to develop this area in some kind of sensible fashion, I think, is a good idea to consider in terms of if it needs to have some kind of a variance for this. The second portion of this variance relates, and all these things that I just talked about right then were related to the story above grade for the residential above grade as opposed to business. And the second portion of the appeal request is for parking. I've talked this over and with Metropolitan Housing, and for the types of people that are living here, 80% of the bedrooms having parking spaces available would exceed what they would normally consider if this project was not going to be put within the code of the city of Athens. We are providing 2 parking spaces for each apartment and not for the additional bedrooms that are located in the 3-bedroom units. I have, if this is an issue with you, I mean, we could work out some kind of an arrangement where, as long as this property is being managed and used for its intended purpose, which is affordable housing, that this variance would be applied. But if, in the future, some kind of change was happening and this became an open market housing project, that those 2 extra parking spaces would be needed to gain occupancy or to get your certificates to be able to use these buildings as residential use in the city. That's all I have.
Well, I have at least one question. Since we didn't have this drawing in our packet, I didn't properly envision, I don't think, the way that the apartments would be accessed. So I'm assuming now that you enter into the building and each of the 4 units is entered from that first floor.
Yes,
With only 2 of the units having a bedroom on the first floor.
that's correct.
Okay.
The 2, I tried to give, there's a front yard and a backyard right now. I think there's a site plan somewhere there too. That we're trying to give some green space, leave that for, the families are going to live here. And so 2 of the apartments access from pretty much off of Graham Avenue. The other 2 are on the other side of the parking lot, which is more like the rear of the property, but they all have ground floor access and porches and exterior ability to use the outside green space.
Is there anyone in the audience would like to see these drawings? Okay, John, would you please turn them around? We've seen them
Yeah, Kevin Gillespie, who is the Director of Integrated Services of Appalachia, is here. He can come up and answer any questions you might have about what the intent is and what this project is all about. Do you want me to do that?
I would like to add that we did find out that the existing structure that was there, the foundation was added and was built in 1993.
What was 1993?
The original house. The house that was on there was put in 1993. And the part of the code I think that was changed was the last revision, 2001, with the residential and the B3 area.
We are not taking any comments right now. You have a chance later on to come to the board.
Yes.
She was asking about the picture.
Drawing of the picture, which is where's Graham and where's the parking lot? Is Graham here? And this is the parking lot?
Hang on.
No, Graham would
that
be in
is
front of the
Graham.
building.
Here's a. East State Street. This is integrated services.
I think you go ahead and introduce yourself and your address.
Okay, I'm Kevin Gillespie. I'm the Executive Director of Integrated Services of Appalachian, Ohio, commonly referred to as Integrated Services.
And your address, please?
Pardon me?
Your address,
Of our business?
wherever you are,
I
can
live
you
in the
reach?
neighborhood, actually. I live on 29 Grand Park Boulevard, and walking distance to work. And our office is just across the street, and we're actively involved in 6 counties regionally doing family support and family preservation services. We get into a lot of stuff, but that's the core business, is supporting families to remain healthy and intact. And our office is at 11 Graham Drive, just across the street. In terms of our stewardship in the neighborhood, sort of an editorial, I don't know if this is appropriate, but we're committed to the neighborhood, have good relations with all the neighbors that we have contact with, and we have tried to do a responsible job of the building that we're in now used to be a garage and a paint shop, and we've improved it, I hope, quite nicely in a way that has helped our neighborhood that I live in be a better place to live. So hopefully this will continue that. I think it will.
Any questions?
What's the rationale for the need for 10 tenants instead of 8?
It's families, so it'll be 4 families, and 2 bedrooms and 2 3-bedrooms, and we work very closely with Metropolitan Housing Authority. Keith Andrews and his folks will be the property managers, will be the owners, and we're trying to preserve families, and so sometimes we work very closely with Athens County Children's Services and Tri-County Mental Health and the Adam Board, Earl Cecil and Diane Foth, and for that matter, the mayor's office, Paul Logue, has been helpful in helping us think about things, about how they fit within the community. Question again? Oh, the rationale for the number of beds, essentially. And, well, we want it to be, there'll be the first units exactly of that type, according to Keith and Diane. Diane Foth has really taken a lead role in helping us think this through from the Adam Board. They'll be tailored to meet the needs of families, of family size, that's the number of beds and bedrooms. And we could probably go bigger, but that wouldn't have fit on this site, So,
And there is a real need for affordable housing, correct, in this community? It's very difficult.
That's the way they described it.
Yeah, I know.
So,
So,
we should ask that question.
potentially could be more than 10 people living in that whole complex
No.
apartment.
No.
4 families, maybe one family has 5 people.
Oh, let me think about that. Keith, I'll be honest with you, Keith is not here, and there are times in the conversation where probably he's going to manage the property according to his way of doing business. Perhaps that is true. I'm thinking of...
There are federal guidelines you have to follow.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I'm not intimately familiar with those. I'll just be honest with you. But think of it as, let's think this through a minute for the biggest one, the 3rd bedroom. So you might have typically, you might have a husband and a wife or 2 adults raising, say maybe 2 kids in bunk beds. And I'm just going to max out with you a minute here. In one, and then maybe 1 child in the other bedroom. So you might have 5 people in one 3-bedroom apartment. Maybe it would max out to 6. I'm not sure. That would be a question for Keith. But they would be children. I think that's the point that JV was alluding to. That Keith had helped him think that through. That routinely that, it would be, they're little children. So they
Well,
don't,
it's just that when we see this, and we're talking about the parking spaces, and it reads, the total number of parking spaces provided is 8, where the number required for the code is 10, and you said that there would be 10 people in the 4 units.
yeah, but they might be like 2 years old.
I know, but that's a new idea to us.
Oh, I see,
Right.
yeah.
So we have not thought of it, since it didn't say 4 families, it said 10 people.
Yeah.
So,
Well, it'll definitely be families. I mean, I'm the owner. Now, I understand that you all have, and by the way, we are paying for this through funds that stipulate that it'll be affordable housing for families. So we're not going to, me, the executive director of integrated services, we wouldn't, if we flipped it to student rentals, we would have to pay back the guys who are paying for it. But who knows in these times, I mean, I understand you have to take care of the needs of the community. I completely understand that. So I think John alluded to the possibility of a scenario, which of course we have, I mean, I'm not talking about something that's going to happen as everything's going great for us, and we're really excited about this. This is our first attempt at this. It will be families. It'll be 4 families with kids. Absolutely, without a doubt. And that's what we are building it for. I don't know what else beyond that, it's a discussion with the architect and the planners,
I have a question about the zones. Since you established your offices directly across the street, I'm assuming you're involved with code, and so you knew what the zoning situation was on the property we're discussing tonight, correct? Some of my concerns is you're asking to build a multifamily dwelling with setbacks that are appropriate to a business district, meaning that, and we're talking children here, right?
Yeah.
Maximum lot coverage for a multifamily dwelling would be 40%. I think your rear setback is shorter, far shorter than would be required even in R3, where a multifamily dwelling would be appropriate. And so I'm having a lot of difficulty thinking about a multifamily apartment house that only needs setback and lot coverage
If I
for a
could,
business zone.
and John will take this, but if I could just comment, Paul has been at a meeting with me where I didn't do so well in terms of being quiet when it was my turn to be quiet, but I've worried about that too. And there are 2 things. I've done a lot of research on this kind of housing, and the best quality work is done in urban settings. And I can tell you why that is. And here's my short answer to that. In some ways, it's an ideal setting for children, along with good parenting and good stewardship in the community, because of the businesses and the rec center is sitting right there. The skate park, the basketball courts, the rec center is sitting right there. In terms of safety, it's definitely an urban environment. And, we're going to be providing services as well. So, I mean, you got to take care of your kids in this essentially residential feeling area. But I had concerns about that, too.
Well, there's really no place for those kids to take care of them, to go outside and hang out in the lawn, because there's no lawn.
Well,
There's
John's
a
going to
parking
take
lot,
this from,
there's a
again,
fence, there's
I
a street.
completely understand that.
This is
but-
very difficult.
All right?
The setbacks that we have in this, whenever a business district abuts an R district, our setbacks are what are required by the R district. So the setbacks that we have for this project are no different than are required for the entire residential area out there.
Well, just one more comment on this. I got to say this. A key problem is employment and transportation. And I absolutely hear you from a parent support point of view. I hear the concern and share the concern. the incredible value of that placement for like finding a job. This is like, I work all over southeastern Ohio, Benton County, Meigs County. This is really, really, really great for the parents to get a job, and we're going to be working.
Okay, but this is not about getting a job.
I know, I'm telling you, I guess I'm trying to,
So
if you
we
have
shouldn't get
concerns.
off, I don't
Okay,
think.
In terms
So
of
let's
this
stick to the
location,
point.
this is not, the funders love the location in its whole conceptualization, and they don't like to fund stuff that's way out in
I
the
totally
space
understand
around
that,
it.
and the
They like stuff
rationale,
that's
and I
fenced
don't
in.
disagree with that. But then, there are other concerns.
Exactly.
Okay. And Mr. Valentour, I'm looking at this piece of paper, there's a rear setback of 30 feet, correct?
30 feet.
If you were in an R3, it would be 40 feet. Less, let's see, minimum side yards.
Joan, and he has to abide by the rules of his own as a budding, not what the building will go into.
Oh, I realize that, but
But that's
he
an
has
R1.
to abide by the B zone that he's in, correct?
That he's doing with the
Right.
setbacks.
Exactly. I'm not disagreeing with that. He is doing that. But what I'm saying is he's asking for a variance for a structure that is going to house families and children that meets business outline. And I almost think that maybe they should have gone to the planning commission if they'd known this ahead of time and tried to make some other accommodations, because this really doesn't appear in this neighborhood to meet the neighborhood idea of a family setting in terms of outside space.
Maybe it would be a family and maybe the parents or somebody, not instead of children. I don't know, any combination.
Right, that's all I'm saying, is it just is,
We'll meet the R2 setback.
He's abutting an R2 and he is meeting
I'm
R2.
fully,
Okay.
okay.
Okay. Any other questions from the board?
I have a question for either Mr. Eschenbach or Mr. Pesky. Mr. Valentour is talking about this not being a non-conformity. But if in fact residential use was put on the first floor, would that then make it non-conforming? If we gave it a variance? would it-
Legal non-conforming,
What?
legally non-conforming,
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But approved legally non-conforming?
yeah.
Okay, all right, but you would be creating basically a non-conforming property?
Yes, most
Okay.
variances do.
Well, and has anybody talked to the tree commission or the landscape people? What do they have to do in terms of landscaping for this
The
property?
project across the street went through Title 41 for integrated services, and it did go through the tree commission, and that incorporated both lots
Oh, I
as to
see.
what they were
Okay.
required to
So
do.
it has been discussed and taken care of, okay.
We've already gone through that whole
Okay.
process with
Okay.
the site review.
Okay.
I have a question on parking. So there'll be at least 2 apartments on the first floor, and we're assuming those will be filled by children under the age of 18 with some kind of physical disability.
It's just a requirement for, I
Federal-
think, the
federal
funding source we
requirement.
have accessible units.
Okay. So because I don't really understand the whole nature of this business, but these structures are not necessarily for people with physical disabilities or family that have children that have physical disabilities.
We have the ability to support one child or one person from each, at least 2 of the apartments.
Okay, but that's not the major intent, or that's
No.
not the client you're looking for?
No.
Okay, because my concern was that you had no handicap parking, and so I didn't, you know what I'm saying, right, there was no,
Yeah.
but in which case, if you would facilitate a child or children in more than one of those units, 1 or more, or at least 2, then you would have to provide parking, handicap parking. And so that would almost eliminate one other spot, correct?
Well, I haven't thought that far ahead,
Okay.
to tell you the truth.
Okay, John, anything else you want to say right now? You get a chance to come back again if you want to. Anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request can speak now. Okay. Anyone wishing to speak in general commentary about this case? Or anyone wishing to speak in opposition? Yes, sir. Please come forward. Yes, sir. And please state your name and your address for the record, and then tell us what you want to talk about.
My name is Mitch Endick. I have a business close to this business that they're working on. You know, I have a dock and a parking lot that's basically across the street from these apartments. And I have to say that John, these gentlemen do great work. Fabulous work. They've helped the community in my area there. But I'm really concerned about the parking. I feel that kids, I have 3 kids myself, kids don't stay 2 years old for long. They grow up. Kids have friends with cars, they have their own cars, they have people with relatives. Having 8 parking spots, am I right? 8 parking spots for that many bedrooms, it just doesn't seem like it's going to work. It's just too much apartment in one place where it was a single-family house. Now it's going to be 4 apartments, 2 of them pretty good size. So my concern is they're going to wind up on my lot. I have to tell them.
Where is your lot again, sir?
I own Sofa and Mattress Outlet,
Okay.
and it's
So right in front of this property?
That's correct.
Okay.
And these gentlemen have a business right behind mine, which is a great business, beautiful place. But the parking is really limited there. And I'm afraid that I'm going to have to deal with people in my lot. And we have docks there where we bring trucks in. And also, if there's going to be 2-year-old kids, we have trucks coming in and out of there. The rec center's across the street, true. But have you tried to cross East State Street? People drive right through that light. They don't even stop for it half the time. So I have a real concern about it. If there's enough parking, I'm good with it. But trying to give a variance on the parking really bothers me. And as far as the first floor deal, that's fine with me, as far as having apartments on the first floor.
So
That's
let me
what I'd
just,
say.
I just need to make sure I understand you. Your issue is not the building necessarily itself.
Not at all.
It's the parking.
Not at all, just the parking. That's all I'm concerned about.
And perhaps the number of people that will be occupying the building?
That is up to whatever the zoning or the code says. That's not for me to say. I just know that having 3 kids myself, we need more than 2 parking spots for my family. And if you're going to put a husband and a wife and 3 kids in there, kids grow up, they have friends, they have relatives, you know, people come over. I mean, just a few spots isn't enough. They have to go somewhere. So what happens is if you build a big unit, other people in the neighborhood have to take up their parking spots. They have to deal with their overage of the parking.
And if I recall on Graham, there's nowhere to park
There's not.
on-street parking. There's,
You have to illegally park, I'm assuming, I'm not sure.
I don't know if it's legal, but I'm not advocating parking on the street, but that's what happened.
thank you. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else who would like to speak in opposition?
Mr. Gozzi?
Yes, sir.
Late this afternoon, we received a letter in the office from a Graham Drive resident who wanted their letter submitted, so with your permission, I'll just go ahead and read it.
Sure, go ahead.
This is from Marjorie S. Stone, who lives at 49 Graham Drive. Dear Chairperson and board members, with understanding and respect for the duties of the board undertakes, this is to ask that the board reject the appeal for the variances of the code for 10 Graham Drive. When I came here in the mid-1950s, I think there was no zoning. It was the beginning of renewed growth of Athens, however, and the need for regulations of that growth, both for homes and businesses, was recognized. Much attention was done to determine how Athens should grow. Research, publications, public meetings, committee meetings, and zoning regulations were established. Over the years, some of the regulations have been altered and individual appeals granted. This one does not seem to be necessary, however. I should like to point out that the present property owners in the general area under discussion have been able to abide by the current regulations without detriment. The zoning stipulation to keep the first floor of a building for business, not housing, honors the plan, as does the regulation for parking spaces. To allow less parking spaces than zoned would open a Pandora's box. I am sure the board not only considers the request for a variance, but also always keeps in mind the value of adjacent property and the integrity of the neighborhood. Yours truly, Marjorie S. Stone.
Thank you, Paul. Yes, sir. Or ma'am. Please state your name and your address for the record.
Good evening, I'm Betty Sexton. I live at 17, my husband and I live at 17 Graham Drive. We're close neighbors. I agree with Mr. Endick. Probably our biggest opposition to this is the increased traffic and parking on the street. Already, we've seen since their business has grown, their clientele park on our street during their business hours. So you have that parking. It almost seems like that parking lot is full already with just employees. So the thought that there is also supposed to be enough parking places there for residents to park in that parking lot kind of boggles my mind. Just to give you an idea what our street is like too, very residential, older people, no sidewalks. So it's basically a pedestrian street. So there's constantly kids riding bikes, walking up and down, with basketballs, people pushing baby carriages, older people walking. So I'm just envisioning the street now with parking all up and down it. It's difficult for the utility trucks to get through, the municipal, garbage pickup, all that, when it's basically back down to one lane. Also, Graham Drive, just by the way of when East State got built up in that little section too, now only allows, if you're going to enter Graham Drive from the west of East State Street, you have to come in Strathmore. I don't know if you all realize that.
Right.
So that's like more traffic up Strathmore and down and around if we have that many more people living on that little block of Graham. And also, even if you were coming east off of East State to turn in, say those residents to live there, those businesses that have a front to East State Street, also sometimes like a Subway and Bumper to Bumper, to get out, sometimes they come into Graham. That becomes a traffic jammed area too, with extra people coming and going in that block. That's our concern also. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else would like to speak in opposition?
Not in opposition, but I would like to make a comment.
Well, this is your chance now.
Yes.
Come to the floor, yes.
So the issue is not, so then, with a lot more money, which I'm not sure we can get, because times have changed since we started this. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, I looked at John, the easy fix is to just use the existing zoning and go up in the air and use the under space for parking. That would be the expensive, easy fix. I will just say that I too live in the neighborhood and enjoy all the things that you described. And it's like the issue of raising kids in that neighborhood. It's sort of like access to employment. It would be a great place to raise kids for the kinds of people that we hope to provide housing for. In terms of the density, the issue of going up, to me, that would, John has worked hard and his staff to keep the profile low so that it kind of fits in the neighborhood that I live in too and work in. So we're very, and again, a lot of the research I did was in not Duluth. I went to Duluth, Minnesota, for instance, to kind of get a sense of this, where it's sort of a small urban, not this small, not college town, but so they don't have the issues of the parking of students and flipping rooms and all that kind of stuff. But this is not in the scheme of things. In doing this kind of work in America, this is like out of a Rockwell painting picture for because of the good citizens who live in the neighborhood. And I'm just making the point that giving the existing zoning, not asking for a variance, the easy solution, except for the expense, would have been to go up and create somewhat of a more urban-y, creepy-looking structure. We really don't We have broad streets. It is true that people walk in the streets. Again, that was some of the what we liked about putting family housing in this neighborhood. It's a very friendly, diverse neighborhood, and we hope to contribute to that, make it even better. So, I don't know.
I have one other question. So this is to be affordable
Yes,
family
ma'am.
housing. Can you talk a little bit about typical turnover in such a unit? Do people stay
Well, I can
years
say
and
is,
years or short
again, that
terms?
would be a Keith question. I can say, as like any landlord, I'm just a regular owner at that point. I don't want any turnover. And our service people are going to do everything that we can do to keep those units as stable as they can, because when they turn over, that's expensive. So, I mean, we want to preserve the families because we want to preserve, keep the families whole and good and productive. But we also, we have a financial reason to keep those units stable.
Well, I guess I was just thinking about if somebody got a better job and their circumstances changed, would they then be able to stay in that housing, or would
Yes.
they be expected
Yes,
to?
that would be means tested through Keith. He could talk the details of that. You can move out. You can move through. You could live there for 5 years and then buy your own house and move out. I mean, that's the plan. That's what we're working on.
Well, thank you, sir. Mr. Valentour, do you have any final thoughts or anything else you want to add? No. Okay. Okay.
I would like to add one thing from the
Sure.
comments that I heard, that I just want you to keep in mind that this is a B3 zone. So that technically there could be an office building, could be a medical clinic that could go up to 3,200 square feet and still have the 8 parking spaces with less setbacks. So I'm just throwing that out there to you. So this is approximately 2,400 square feet. So, I mean, I understand the concerns of the citizens, but it is a B3 zone, so that there could be a business use there that could be in compliance as it sits.
Thanks. Well, the discussion from the floor is closed, and we will now discuss among ourselves. And any discussion before somebody makes a motion?
I don't have the exact stuff in front of me, so somebody else make the motion.
I can do it.
Okay, Joe.
I move that the board consider case 1013V, 10 Graham Drive, requesting a variance from ACC 2310, Table B, off-street parking requirements, to allow construction of a 4-unit apartment building with 10 total tenants with 8 parking spaces, where 10 parking spaces are required. I'm going to stop here a minute because this reads total tenants, and we need to talk about total bedrooms.
Or total
Well,
family.
see, under zoning code, just as an example, like in an R1 house with 3 bedrooms, or if you have enough space, you can have 3 individuals, non-related individuals, or you can have a family. And in the zoning code, there's no limit on the number of family members.
So then
So if they're non-related, then yes, it's regulated by the number of people. But under families, all it says is a family.
And then requires 2 a spot, right?
At least
For
2, but
family.
1 per bedroom.
Well, again, we set all these rentals up for the possibility of non-related individuals living in them. That's the stricter part of it. If it's a family, if it's a single home, you can have 3 non-related individuals in it, or if you can have a family, you could have parents and 8 kids. Okay? You're still required the same amount of parking spaces, and if you're building it new, it would still have to have all the same setbacks about it. But the zoning code is set up to, since we feel that non-related individuals are, for lack of a better way of putting it, more of a nuisance, more trouble, can have more things happen, that's what the restrictions are set up for. But as far as families, as long as everyone is related,
Well, but then it doesn't make sense for us
No.
to say 10 tenants.
Correct.
to put the variance in those terms. We need to say
Well, it depends on what you want to do with the variance.
For families.
Well, I don't know that we
If
can
you're just, if
actually,
you're just
You can't change the
considering
wording.
this use now by these people, then no. But a variance, depending on how you guys phrase it, goes up with the property forever. So as he said, if at some point that it's no longer owned by them or run by them or by Athens Metropolitan Housing, the next owner, the next manager, is allowed to rent them out to students. And that's what the restrictions are for. So if you say, you can put, what I would recommend is
Do 10 spaces.
with 10 total tenants or 4 families.
Okay. That makes sense.
So you,
yeah, I know. But do we want to put an exception?
the parking?
A condition?
What's the condition?
Well, if it's no longer, the building is no longer owned by Integrated Services, then the variance for parking needs to come back for review.
I'm
Because that would
Like to make
indicate that we're
correction.
giving special privilege to them.
I think they're
right
willing to
off the
go
bat.
with 8 total tenants. So that way it's 1-to-1 parking or 4 families.
Yes, I think
Okay,
that makes sense.
so
Yes, let's do
I
that.
think that would leave it, you know, that first room can be, that lower level can become a den or a media room or whatever. That's
Yes.
all.
John, is that okay?
Is that okay?
Yes, let's do that, okay.
So that would allow for mix and match, either, individuals or maybe a family.
Well, and if you did that, then presumably, then does that take care of the parking?
Takes care of the parking.
So then that
Yes.
variance is off the table. Right?
Right,
If
Paul?
you
That's a
wanted to-
problem, though, because we still have a 3-bedroom unit.
Well, but if you have a family and you have
But we're
two,
assuming they're families
You
because
can't
that's what's
regulate the
happening
number
right
of
now.
bedrooms, we can only regulate the number of people.
And you can't regulate what kind.
Yeah, let's go with maybe
There are
8.
there are plenty of rentals in town that have more bedrooms
Please don't remind
than
us.
what's allowed, than the number of people that are allowed.
oh, no, they have more people in bedrooms.
You got all sorts of rights, but there are rentals in town, in your neighborhood, there's several rentals that have 5 bedrooms in the house, but it's an R1, they can only allow 3
I
people.
know they're only allowed, but they probably have 6 people in them, so it's okay.
Not when I check.
Good. Okay, so,
Okay, so what we want to say then
8
is,
people,
Joan, go ahead.
right,
8 people of 4 families.
so if I can amend this, and I'm assuming this is Hoyle according to code, that we no longer are requesting a variance for 2310 off-street parking.
I still think you want to keep that in there because for as a family, you would need the 10. So it's a variance from 10
Every
parking
single
spaces
person
for
would need-
families.
Every family member?
A 3-bedroom would require 3 parking
We're
spaces on a
looking for
family,
at
correct?
affordable
Well, that's
houses, so
just
every
what I
person
said.
can afford a car.
Number of people, not number of bedrooms.
So,
So yeah, if you're going to limit it to 8
people.
individuals
And
or
then you got
4 families,
Then you got 8
then
spaces.
that takes care of the parking,
yeah.
need for a parking variance.
Okay. Oh, he said
Why
that.
are we not recognizing the 3rd bedroom in 2 apartments?
Because we don't regulate the number of bedrooms that are built or that exist in rental units. We regulate the number of people that are in the unit. You could have a 5-bedroom house in an R1 zone, that's allowed, but you can only have 3 individuals in it.
Unrelated.
But if you have a rooming house with 10 rooms,
That's
for
a different zone.
every room,
But again, we regulate by the
different
number
zone.
of people that are going to be in that 10-room rooming house.
Yeah.
They can say they have 10 rooms, what we're interested in is this number of people in it, and to make sure that there is enough space for those people.
well, it's not about space for those people, it's about space for your car.
So we're saying if it ever became a rental down the road, for a
8.
student, the maximum number is going to be 8,
8.
which is what they have parking-wise. So, yes, it has an extra
They'll have to
bedroom,
have a
but
study.
It
that's...
has an extra room that unscrupulous people could use for bedrooms, but we're going to be inspecting these once a year. That's one of the things I always look for, is the number of people in each unit. I don't
Unscrupulous.
care how many bedrooms
Thanks.
there are, I count how many people are in it.
one for each permitted occupant and a minimum of 2 per unit
Husband has
dwelling.
one room, the wife has another room, you know? They don't want to be in the same room, maybe.
Okay, so well, if we're having a total of 8 tenants, then,
Or 4 families.
Or 4 families.
then we only need 8 parking places, correct?
Exactly.
Correct.
Correct.
You're on it.
So if you
got it.
phrase the variance to say 8 tenants or 4 families, then you don't need a parking variance. If you limit it to 8 individuals.
No, I don't want to say 4 families, I want to say 8 tenants, because 4 families could be more than 8
Well, we
tenants.
don't.
We can't regulate that.
So we can
We
just
don't
say,
regulate the number of people in a family.
exactly.
That's a whole nother issue.
Right. Okay, well, I'm going to read this as I want to read it. If someone wants to correct it, they can correct it. I'll start from the beginning. The board moves to hear an appeal for case number 1013V, 10 Graham Drive, requesting a variance from AC 2310, Table B, off-street parking requirements to allow construction of a 4-unit apartment building with 8 tenants with 8 parking spaces,
Or 4 families.
or 4 families,
Yes. Yes.
where 10 parking places are required?
No. Joan, what we have been talking is either 8 tenants or 4 families with 8 parking spaces.
So it's a total of 8 tenants or 4 families with 8 parking places.
Right.
Doesn't require a variance.
So then,
If you want to look at it in a certain way,
We
that's a
don't need the
condition.
variance.
That's a
I'm just
condition,
not
well, but it's a
fighting
condition for
those here.
future use. Again, if Metropolitan Housing and Integrated Services leaves this and a regular person buys this and wants to rent this to students or anybody, you've put in a condition there that
8
says they
people.
can't have any more than 2 people per unit. Or a family.
Okay, so what about the rest of it?
and from ACC 230405A1, to allow residential use on the first floor where the requirement is for residential use on the second story and above in a B3 zone.
I second that.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? I'm going to go through the findings quickly, if it's okay with everyone.
Thank you.
Okay, practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property, a literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of the public purposes. What is the hardship?
I don't think there is. I think it could have remained a single-family dwelling on that piece of property.
Well, it could, but then you'd have a single-family dwelling in an R3,
In
in
a
a
B3.
zone.
Or it could become a business, like
Or
you
as
said.
John here mentioned, it could be developed in other type of,
Well, but I
the
think,
land could be used in other,
but I think you could argue that it will create a hardship. There is a lot that is in fact in a B3 zone. It is in fact, as Mr. Valentour says, in a transitional zone, which is what B3 is intended to be here.
Right.
And it butts right up against the R2 zone. So I think saying that they can't do this here would create a hardship for them that may not be necessary to achieve public purposes in my mind.
okay, that sounds good. Anyone else?
Well, it is a transitional zone. Are we
Right.
transitioning into the residential area? Or are we transitioning into possibly the next-door neighbor saying,
No.
well, I want to do a business,
You're transitioning.
large apartment complex on
From
my
a
house? I think I'll
business-
tear my single house down and put the same thing in next door to that one.
Well,
When does transition stop?
it
And
stops
the
right there in
residential
that
area
line.
begin?
It's there.
It's on
very
that
clearly
line.
on the
It's
zone.
that line right
Yeah,
there.
it's that line.
They're,
Which this
they're in the
property
zone.
sits right on.
They're in the business zone.
Okay, folks, exceptional circumstances. There are exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions applying to the property in question or to the intended use of the property that do not apply generally to the other properties or classes or uses in the same zone. What is the exceptional circumstance?
Well, it's in this transitional
Transition.
twilight zone.
Right. Well, it could be business, it could be, residential, and this kind of seems to be, in between. Utilizing the best of all the worlds, maybe, possibly.
Business on bottom,
Rather than
residential
a-
on top.
Well, that's really the only thing that's being asked for, is to have residential on the first floor.
On the first floor.
Right. And I think the other exceptional circumstance is that this is intended to be part of an effort to create affordable housing.
Okay, preservation of equal property rights. Literal interpretation of these regulations would deprive the appellant of rights commonly enjoyed by others in the same zone and the same vicinity, while the granting of the requested variance will not confer on the applicant any special privilege that is denied to other properties in the same zone and the same vicinity.
Well, you could say that it's a special privilege to be able to have residential on the bottom where it should be maintained as a business. A business owner may choose to forego their business and put rentals in where they used to have a business.
But then they'd have to come back here
Well, they would,
to the board.
but that's a possibility.
Okay, you have been quiet. No?
Not on this one.
Minimum variance. The variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property.
I think they're going
I don't
beyond
think
that.
it's a
That's the
minimum.
one that I have some
I
problem
think it
with.
could be much smaller and still make reasonable use of that property. Absolutely.
Absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest.
Well, we did have 3 people speak somewhat in
Yeah.
opposition, and no one spoke in favor
Favor.
from the neighborhood, so,
And we had the letter also.
And we had the
well,
letter.
that was the third one then, right?
Not of a general nature, the condition or situation of the specific piece of property or the intended use of said property for which variance is sought is not of a so general or recurrent nature as to make reasonably practicable the formulation of a general regulation for such condition or situation.
No, we don't have that many B3s over there.
No, this is where I agree with John, and perhaps the city planning committee should say and really get strict guidelines as to what transitional zones should be used for and can be used for.
I think that's an excellent idea.
So this would be a great case for that.
You're all ready to vote? Joan, you want to start with you?
No,
Michelle?
No.
Betty?
I'm going to vote yes.
Greg?
No.
And I vote no as well.
I did actually, sort of, but I didn't circle. Smaller project.
Okay. John, if I heard you correctly, you had some alternative plans for this.
We're going to build a big building.
Okay.
That's great.
Okay, case number 2. Case number 10-14V17 West Washington Street. Christopher Pyle is the appellant, Zone B2D. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 2310 Table B off-street parking requirements to allow construction of 4 apartments within the building with 16 total tenants with 0 on-site parking spaces, with 16 leased parking spaces located 280 feet from the lot, where the requirement is for 16 parking spaces on-site or within 250 feet of the lot in the same ownership. Paul, any comments?
No, again, it's pretty self-explanatory. The one just wanted to point out was that in their letter, they said 300 feet from the premises. I tried to do as accurate a thing as possible, so that's why the variance says 280 feet, because I think that's closer to accurate.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Mr. Pyle, or do we have the appellant? Okay. Please come to the podium, state your name and your address and your case.
Hi, I'm Chris Pyle with 80 South Shannon. Basically, I guess I could just run through what I've given you all. I didn't write a dramatic speech. So we just bought the building that Donkey is located in. We've been there for almost 9 years now. And the long and short of it is we need to put something upstairs to pay for the huge mortgage that we have now. And what's happened is we inherited a small apartment in the back there. It's really run down, and I'm actually pretty embarrassed by it, but it is what it is for right now. And then almost the whole second floor is unused. There's a small space that Minutemen Press still uses. They're a business in the building as well that's downstairs, and they've agreed to move downstairs so that we can start a building project up there. It's been unoccupied like this. It looks like just a big storage area almost for as long as we've been there. We desire to significantly improve the building by building 4 apartments on the second floor for 16 residents. By bringing the entire building up to current fire, building, and housing codes, the building will be safer and will contribute to the economic vitality of uptown Athens. It's nothing new putting student apartments on the second floor of a building. Right now, there's no sprinkler system for the whole entire building, and in doing this, we would have to put the sprinkler system in the whole entire building. That would include Donkey and Minutemen Press, the way the code works out. In order to provide the 16 designated parking spaces for the apartments, we've executed a 5-year lease with Cranberry Row parking lot at 26 North Congress, and it says here 300 feet from the premises, so it's somewhere in between 250 and
corner.
300. It's behind. It's basically behind the People's Bank building.
It's
36, isn't it?
if you go down Court Street
Yes.
and you go left on the second alley where Salon used to be located there,
Yes.
you go up that alley and about 2/3 of the way up on the left behind 26 North Congress.
Got ya.
It's an open parking area. That's what he's referring to.
How many spaces are in that lot, you know?
I don't know total. Some of them
It's a net, well,
are dedicated to 26 North Congress, but that's grandfathered, so I think they only need 7 spaces.
There's
for,
like 60 parking spaces.
Yeah, there's-
for the other.
I was going to say 50 or so, but yeah.
Okay.
Excuse me. So there's precedence for parking variances granted for other developers who have not satisfied the deed restriction requirement. Basically, we have no parking for this apartment complex. I don't even have a spot to park in the building as of now. Let's see. Attached are a few copies of resolutions this board has made in response to similar requests for parking variances, and I'll just mention one of them, but I think there's 3 or 4 down here. One that just happened last year was the People's Bank owners just put up, I believe it's an 8-bedroom space there, and they're using, I believe, the same exact parking spot that we are requesting as well. And they're about, 50 feet from us. across from Donkey. Residential rentals are the best use of the second floor space for 17 West Washington for justifying the investment necessary to renovate it. Without the board's approval for the requested parking variance, the development cannot be pursued and half of the building will remain undeveloped. As of now, we have a deal with the bank where we can just pay interest for 2 years until we can put something up there that would make money. And I'll just go through these questions. Is that appropriate? Go down the line of this. Question 1, will the granting of the variance be in accord with the general purpose and intent of the code for the zone in which it is located? And the answer is the code is in place to ensure suitable parking is provided for those living uptown so their cars do not end up in adjacent neighborhoods. The granting of this variance will provide 16 uptown off-street parking spaces for 16 residents. 2, will the variance be injurious, is that how you pronounce that? Injurious? To the area or detrimental to public welfare? Answer, no, nothing about providing domicile for 16 people at 17 West Washington will be detrimental to public welfare. The renovating of 17 West Washington will only serve to improve the aesthetic, safety, and property value of the building and surrounding areas. What particular circumstances related to the land buildings require the variance? And that's residential housing is the only economic use for the second floor of the building that justifies the enormous expense necessary to bring the building up to code. However, a lot at 17 West Washington isn't big enough to provide parking for 16 residents. Why do these circumstances not apply in general to other properties? Answer, the circumstances do not apply to some buildings that provide housing because they are grandfathered, and they are therefore not required to provide parking spaces for each resident. Other buildings which house residents are able to provide parking with the aid of a variance related to distance of parking, ownership, or deed restriction. Will denial of the variance deprive the appellant of reasonable use of the land? The answer is absolutely. Providing housing in Uptown Athens is perhaps the most reasonable use of the building space. Without the parking variance, the appellant will be unable to improve the building, both in code and aesthetics. The building will lose money, as no other use of the building would justify the investment necessary to renovate it. What hardship will be created by the strict application of the code? Strict application of the code will place a hardship on the project that is insurmountable. If denied, the appellant will be unable to renovate the building, and the second floor space of 17 West Washington will be virtually unused, as any potential tenants would have prohibitive cost in bringing the portion of the building up to current code. The variance is the only obstacle to allowing reasonable use of the building. And then will the variance be the minimum that would allow reasonable use of the land? The answer is yes. Will the variance impair the supply of air or light to adjacent properties? The answer is no. The neighboring property is a sheriff's station, has no windows on the side of the building that would be visible from 17 West Washington. Will the variance substantially increase the congestion in public streets, increase the risk of fire, endanger public safety, or substantially diminish or impair adjacent property values? Again, no, the variance will result in 16 additional people living uptown, which would not significantly increase congestion. The newly remodeled building will decrease the risk of fire, enhance public safety, and significantly improve the adjacent property values. The renovations are in line with the city's goal to encourage mixed uses in the uptown area by providing well-designated residential housing alongside local businesses with services and access to the campus. And then the final question 10, will the variance confer special privilege to the appellant that would otherwise be denied land building in the same zone? No. There's precedence for parking variances granted for other developers who have not satisfied the deed restriction requirement and had parking that was located outside the 250-foot requirement. And the newest one being the People's Bank, which they renovated last year.
Mr. Pyle, you already have maybe at least 4 or 5 years to for the parking space, and after the 5 years, if you can't get the lease anymore, then we probably have to put a condition on it that this variance would be based on the condition that you always have.
Sure, that would make sense.
He doesn't have parking on a lease and show that, he loses his rental permits as well.
Yeah. It doesn't have to be an extra condition. It's automatic that if you grant it with leased parking, he has to have the lease.
Okay. If we don't mention the condition, that it still will apply then?
If, worst case scenario in 5 years, he can't get parking, then he has to come before the board or come up with a different
Okay.
method.
Okay, that's good.
Or also, John, if like the distances for the parking would change, meaning it would be longer than shorter.
Yeah, if he goes to a different parking area, yeah.
Right now, there was a case, I believe it was with the building that Rick Wasserman just renovated, and it was maybe 15 times more.
Yes, we know.
Okay.
It's an outlier. Forget that. It's an outlier. And I have to say that I think the only reason that that variance was granted was because that building was essentially vacant. And they made the decision on having a building that's just crumbling to pieces. And
The second floor, you mean, of that building?
is pretty much a hazard and just deteriorates further. But yes, that was an exception to our variances. So can you tell me what the square footage of this upstairs part is?
Excuse me?
The square footage of this area
I
upstairs?
believe it's including well, not including the small space of donkey that's upstairs. I believe it's about 4,500 square feet.
Any other questions from the board for Mr. Pyle? Okay, you may be seated, and then we may call you again if you have any other to add. Is anyone wishing to speak in favor of the request? Is anyone wishing to speak in general or in opposition to the request? John or Paul, any other additional comments? Okay, we close the discussion from the floor, and I guess we should maybe go with another motion. You want to make another motion?
I move we grant a variance to the property at 17 West Washington Street from Section ACC 2310, Table B, off-street parking requirements, to allow construction of 4 apartments within the building with 16 total tenants, with 0 on-site parking spaces, with 16 leased parking spaces located 280 feet from the lot, where the requirement is for 16 parking spaces on-site or within 250 feet of the lot and in the same ownership.
I second.
Practical difficulty and undue hardship. Because of the exceptional or extraordinary circumstances or conditions pertaining to a specific piece of property, a literal enforcement of these regulations will result in practical difficulty or undue hardship that is unnecessary to the achievement of the public purposes.
Well, it's definitely practical
With the mortgage.
difficulty of the property because there's no more space
No more
left to
space.
park, right?
Special circumstances. Do we need to read everyone?
No.
Okay. Is there any special circumstances to this piece of property that makes it exceptional?
Well, it's
Again, the same number
Yeah.
of parking lots.
the location
Yeah.
and parking. and-
Right, many of the other places have grandfathered in, so
Right.
then,
Right.
Preservation of equal property rights.
in that uptown area,
There's other people, I mentioned the place across the street, but there are numerous
Okay.
properties.
Minimum variance, the variance granted is the minimum variance required to make possible the reasonable use of the property. I guess 30 feet is left from there.
Very minimal.
I would say it's minimal. Of course, it's not in the ownership of the, that's another part. Is it minimal?
Well, I mean, he's already has, it sounded like he's got part of Donkey already up there, and he's having another tenant that's already up there, moved down to the bottom. So 2 businesses are already making use of that area,
A very small part of the area.
but it's usable.
first floor.
No, he said on the second.
On the second floor.
Donkey's up there in some
There's a
capacity.
small
as
part.
well.
Oh, right,
So
the small part of
pretty much
Donkey.
kind of
And there's an
second.
apartment of some sort that sounds like it's,
So I have a little trouble with minimum.
well,
Well, I think we have to,
I would argue too that the property needs to be upgraded and made safe.
well, but yes,
That's
we need
what
to
I was-
make a reasonable use of the property, so,
Yeah, but that's like, what do you say, almost 4,500 square feet, that's a lot of space, and they're not barely using the space with those 2. Small pieces.
Okay, absence of detriment. The authorizing of such variance will not be of substantial detriment to the adjacent property and will not materially impair the purpose of the zoning code or the public interest.
No, I think on the contrary, if they're going to
Improve.
upgrade all the services in that building because they're going to remodel the second floor, then that would be,
And there was a fire next door in the was that the building next door that had the fire? Yeah, recently.
And not of a general nature.
it was beginning to become a general nature, but maybe not at this point. Yeah, we're only at 9, we're not at 10 yet, right?
Okay, let's go from this side. No. No?
Yes. We knew that. Yes.
Yes.
Oh. And I vote no as well, so, but you have the variance.
3 to 2?
3 to 2.
You're welcome.
Case number 3.
Are they here?
Mr. Rosen, I don't think we have any representatives from Taylor Motors here.
No.
They were notified through the proper channels by mail,
Okay.
so, and we may be having another meeting in 2 weeks, so
Okay.
they have to.
It was already there. It's not that.
No, I think we wait.
Okay. Yeah, let me wait.
I'm sorry.
So case number 10-15, V250 Columbus Road, Taylor Motors will be tabled for now. Case number 4, and this sounds like to be the first case in January in 2011 filed?
First case to be filed in
Okay,
2001.
very good. The first case in 2011 is case 1101B, properties at 135 Millerton Street. And the appellant is Anthony
Farian.
The appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 250411 to allow importation of fill of less than 2 cubic feet per square foot for a property more than 1 acre in size, where the maximum allowed is less than 1/2 cubic foot, again, per square foot of fill for a property more than 1 acre in size. The way I understand, they want to bring the property up by 2 feet or maybe around 2 feet, where 1/2 a foot is allowed. Am I correct?
Okay.
Okay.
According to ACC Chapter 250411, it's our flood code that was adopted December of last year, and I did, Paul Lowe is here as well tonight for city planner to help explain this. Lots within the floodway that are less than a 1/2 acre, or 1 acre, are allowed to have 2 cubic fill, I'm sorry. You want to take it?
You're close.
Yes.
Good evening, Paul Lewis, city planner, the city's floodplain administrator. The situation here is that Mr. Farian's project is in the 50-year floodplain. When the city of Athens, back in December of '09, we adopted a new Title 25, an update on the old one. The committee that created that ordinance adopted some higher standards than what FEMA requires. The compensatory storage and the reduction of the amount of fill that can be brought in to the 25 and the 50-year floodplains are higher standards. Those were determined that the city thought we needed to do. FEMA is silent on it. So we are asking for, what Mr. Farian's asking for is actually a variance from the city's flood standards. If we did not have this requirement, Mr. Farian's project would still meet FEMA requirements. So we have a higher standard. What the law says is if you're in the 50-year floodplain, if your development is under 1 acre in size, you are allowed to import up to 2 cubic feet of fill dirt for every square foot of land. If you're above 1 acre in size, and I believe Mr. Farian's project is 1.03 acres.
02, I guess, sounds right.
I'm sorry?
02.
02, even smaller.
The size of this room.
Yeah.
More or less, yeah, about the size of this room is what he's exceeding 1
I was
acre.
just counting, it's exactly the size of this room,
Yeah.
so.
So if you go over an acre in size, and that goes from, if you're at 1 acre all the way up to 100 acres. So it's silent on how big we're talking here. You're only allowed to import a half a cubic foot for every square foot of property. So Mr. Farian is asking for a variance from that, so to basically, to be able to import more than a half cubic foot, since he's so close to the 1 acre requirement.
What's the rationale for not building up these apartments?
Most of this was adopted, I was hired by the city on the very tail end of this, and I'll admit at that time, I was completely clueless on floodplain regulations. I was not ever trained in this, so I learned a lot on the fly. But the rationale is that you do not want to be, the closer you get to frequently flooded areas, you don't want to be just putting fill everywhere.
Islands.
Because then what that does is it protects the property owner on site from the risks of operating in a floodplain, but it basically pushes that risk out to your neighbors. So you basically kind of build these little islands where I'm okay because I built up high, and now, so you're dispensing water from your parcel onto other people's parcels. So that's the rationale behind it, as to why we would address that. The issue, I think, is that we're so close to being that 1 acre, and when John and I ran through the numbers, and I should probably let Mr. Farian speak on some of this, but if he were at 0.99 acres,
That would have been
he would be able, he's asking for a variance to import less dirt than he would be legally allowed to if he were at 0.99. And so we're so close to that margin that it brings a reasonable question as to should we be applying the same standard for 1.03 acres that we would apply for a 10-acre
Well, and
project.
since directly across from him are properties that are quite built up.
Well, like I said, he's not building up the property, per se.
Well-
It's still going to be at the grade he's at. What he's trying to do is fill in an area between 2 buildings that he's requesting to do for handicap access for grade to get up into them. So the base of the property will still be at the grade as everything around it. The buildings will be elevated up out of the floodplain, by floodplain requirements, as he did across the street and his other buildings as well. This is just to provide a green space and a handicap access into the buildings, but gradually, the fill's going to take, because it's going to be about 7 foot tall of grade of fill in between the 2 buildings, but everything around the buildings will still remain at the grade that the streets are at and the existing structures are at and everything else. So
He's not really filling the whole physical area.
Okay.
That's much clearer.
Did you state your name and address, please?
Yeah, Anthony Farian, 8800 Lavelle Road. And I think what kind of prompted this, we've got a couple of visuals here. What kind of prompted this was we were at I was getting ready to submit a plan for a building on this site. It was just one building at the time. And I went to the city council meeting and where they had talked about introducing legislation about a 40% green area. And I thought, wow, at first I thought, wow, this is really going to hurt my project. And then after, and John Ballantyre is also my architect, and after meeting with the city planner, Paul, and John, and we started to take a shift and look at the way we were addressing this, because we were looking at it as this one big parking lot, which seems to be a huge problem in this town. And by the way, I'm not here asking for parking. Thank God. But I have this. You can see this green space here, and right now the way the law exists, I can come in here and I can develop this way with very little green space, maybe 15%. So we took a look at what these guys were talking about, John Ballantyre and I, with some help from John and Paul. And what we came up with was a project with a little over 40% green.
all right, which will alleviate, it not only good for the community and making it appealing to people, but good on the stormwater alleviation, getting the kids out of the parking lots, you know, and putting them into an area where they can coexist and play football and do some things, because this is the scale. It's a much larger area. There's 70 feet and 220 feet going this way, so it's almost like a courtyard effect. And what these guys were alluding to was this law, which I wasn't aware of when we started this thing, and then we kind of made aware pretty immediately about the FEMA regulations. So we were going to kind of try to bring this area up so the kids could kind of walk out of their areas onto this green area. Because my proposed project that I can do now without asking is one big parking lot. Basically with the green that's in the front of the buildings, which is required by the city setbacks. And when I look at this is a high density area. This is, I'm sure you guys know where we're at down there. And trying to kind of fit the neighborhood as a high density area, because I can put more kids in these areas and take less kids off the Morris Avenues and the East End and some of these areas. I've got 4 beat up houses on there right now that I currently rent, which I'll be tearing down. And what I'm trying to do is create a planned unit development, basically, which is actually what we're going to be moving into the next stage of. Instead of just 2 apartment buildings, here you go, here's 90 parking places and a big parking lot. Or we can come in and say, look, we got 40% green area here. This will absorb a lot of the water, alleviate a lot of the environmental impact that the parking lots cause, and then we kind of run into this FEMA thing, which is the law. So, you know, I'm not quite sure how to address some of these questions. I mean, if I was in here asking for parking, I could find lots of precedents, but I'm not.
Before you do that, could you actually describe what I'm looking at? I can see the green.
Oh, yeah, sure. These are this is site plan, obviously.
Yeah, okay. So
this is an apartment building right here.
Where's the street? Where's
Miller? Here's Miller Street right here.
All right.
And here's East Union. So I control all this land from street to street. All right, over here's the university. Actually, it's not the university, it's
Cody.
Riverfront Towers.
Okay.
East
So,
Union.
and I own this building right here too.
Okay.
That's the one that faces onto Stewart?
This one here, that's Stewart over here.
That's Stewart.
Okay.
One across the street's the one the parking lot backs up into the church.
So Mill Island is right there.
This is Mill Island.
Okay.
Where the trees are.
Stewart Street would be here.
Okay, and so where is the parking?
Where's what parking?
The parking for these buildings?
I'm not here to ask for parking.
No, I'm just... Okay, just where's the parking?
Most of it's underneath the building.
Yeah, it's underneath.
Okay, great. Okay, so then, go ahead, you got 2 buildings, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Which is the same thing I have over here.
Okay.
But when we take a look at this, in the spirit of the community, and not just myself, but to really take a look at this, I thought it was a much better plan. I thought these guys had a great idea. And, you know, I could easily walk away and just build this one big parking lot, but I thought, wow, let's take a look at this. I thought they came up with a great idea. And then we ran into this law that FEMA, well, the city actually has written, not FEMA.
Correct.
And I like what Paul said about the fact that we're actually still meeting FEMA requirements. We're just not meeting the city's requirements on the legislation that was passed in
December of '09.
So describe to us where the filled dirt would actually go.
Buildings.
Right through here. There's the openings in the apartment buildings. So we're going to be kind of bringing this up and then gradually sloping it back down. And bring it up, bring it out, and then kind of slope it back down. So all this will be still low lying as per se.
Driving in.
Kind of like a courtyard effect. So the kids will all be able to kind of come out and then, you know, hang out in these areas and, you know, do what they do. I don't know what college kids do. Instead of putting them in parking lots on the streets.
Great.
Because that's where they end up.
Now, could you please, one more time, I'm still a little bit confused that why can't you do this without bringing it up? I mean,
Because
just
it's in the
lay them
flood.
down where it is now. It is not in the floodplain. I mean,
Because he's got parking underneath.
It's in the floodplain.
He's got parking and the buildings are up.
so I don't think he's increasing the level just because of the flooding, right?
Yes.
He is.
The first floor, the first floor of these buildings are going to be about 9 foot above the existing grade.
Okay, so if it's required for the floodplain, then why not just let him do it?
Because it's above
Because
the
it's
city.
against this ordinance, right, it needs to be the new city ordinance from 2009.
There's one other part that's important to mark here, and that this is, the part of code is 250411, I believe, which is compensatory storage. And what it says is that you're allowed to, if you're in the 50-year or the 25-year, which is, that's a given that you're within the 100-year floodplain at that point, okay?
Somewhere.
With the exception of this fill issue, Mr. Farian meets all issues relating to developing in the floodplain. His lowest floors are 1 foot above, venting, all of those issues are being addressed. If he was out of the 50-year floodplain, he'd be able to import unlimited amounts of fill, as long as he's at a minimum 1 foot above for his lowest floor. What it says is that if you're in the 50 or the 25-year, you can import more fill than it says here, but what you have to provide is compensatory storage, which essentially means that you've got to create some sort of on-site retention ponds, which, as you can see, the larger your project might be, the more natural it would be when you have a Kroger, a Walmart, a shopping mall, where you'd want to have a large retention pond or a detention pond to slow the rate of runoff. But when you're getting in residential neighborhoods and things of that nature in a small-scale project, now we're talking about, well, where do you create the space for a ponding system? Do we want that in our neighborhoods, et cetera? And that's probably not what the intent is in this situation.
In the parking.
Was to address something of this size.
That's where the
And again, it's, from my perspective at least, and I don't, maybe I shouldn't even speak on this, but if he were at an acre or less, by code, he would be able to import up to 87,000 cubic feet of dirt.
Okay.
If you're 1 foot over an acre, you're only allowed to import 21,780.
Right.
So we actually allow for the importation in this situation of more fill on smaller projects and less fill on a slightly larger. And what he's asking to do is import even less fill than he would be allowed to import if he were at 1 acre. So we're right on the margin is what I'm saying. It was an unexpected situation that we came across on this project. So that's why, again, he can import if he wants to create compensation, but that gets into its own frustrating situation here that we discovered with Title 25. So it was really unexpected from my perspective. But does that clarify that?
I would like to say, I really appreciate the work that Paul and John have done on this, and because we've really taken a lot of good looks at this thing, and I really appreciate it. I don't know what else to say, because if it wasn't for their thoughts on this, I'd be doing this, but because of their insight and how well a plan unit could be, we were able to take another look at this in a different way. That's it.
I'm assuming this has been through the planning commission and
He has been to the planning commission, and it's just a open, what do they call that?
Communication. He'll be going as a preliminary in the middle of February. But any variances need to be issued prior to that, of course, right? So that he can make changes as appropriate, and we would never want the planning commission or city council to approve something and then it come back to you guys and feel like. That's an endorsement, of course.
Thank you.
And this is a PUD, so it will be going to city council as well.
Correct, right.
Okay, any questions? Anyone wants to speak in favor or general in favor? Okay.
Yeah, I'm in favor.
Please state your name and your address.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Patrick Doherty. I live at 181 West State Street. Again, I'd like to speak in favor of Mr. Farian's proposal here because I'm familiar with both of these projects that he has here that are on the table here. I'm also familiar with the city's comprehensive plan that addresses high-density area development and as well as the newer proposals before the city addressing green space and parking regulation ideas. Like in the comprehensive plan, it encourages developments such as these, in zones such as these, the R3 zones. And again, with the newer city proposals that are before the city, they're attempting the 40% green space requirement, as well as the idea to amend some of the parking requirements for rental housing, the one space for each bedroom. And when I look at Mr. Farian's proposals here, he's actually making a proactive attempt to align this new development with the city's wave of progressive, environmentally friendly thinking. He's attempting to reduce the eco-detrimental concrete playgrounds that are created by the city's one space for each one bedroom requirement. And I just think that as members of this variance board, and as members of the community, I believe you guys have the unique opportunity to be on the ground floor to approve what I consider to be a potential model for future development in the city of Athens for high-density areas in particular. And as a member of this community, I too would like to be involved in this fundamental decision-making process that our community should take towards reducing the environmental impact of housing developments and what they have on our community and the surrounding environment, and that's why I'm here before you guys today. And it's abundantly clear that Mr. Farian can still accomplish all his goals of constructing the same number of bedrooms by using these alternate plans. Plans that are completely legal and that do not provide community members, officials, or representatives the opportunity to weigh in or be a part of this process to approve this whole forward-thinking idea of increased green space and reducing environmental impact of such developments. Under the current regulations, though, however, Mr. Farian, he can only accomplish this goal by using these alternative plans, unless, approved by you guys, which would require paving the project site almost entirely. So, and it's evident he doesn't want to go this route, as by his presence here tonight. So to me, it just seems responsible to approve this proposal as we already know the consequences of what's going to happen if it's not approved. So, and if it's not approved, I feel the city will really lose out on what I consider to be a model for future development. Like I said, these high-density areas that embodies this whole forward-thinking and progressive-mindedness that we're moving forward an environmentally friendly approach to development in the city of Athens here. So, in this instance, that would be counterproductive, as it could hurt our position, because it could set precedent that we prefer concrete to green space, and that's not something that I think our community wants to look towards. So that's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Great argument. Anyone else who wants to speak for or against, or we don't have anyone else? Mr. Farian, you want to say any final word? So did you say you were going to go with the plan on the left, right? On my left?
This is my intentions, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so we might discuss that, we stay based on the plans submitted, so that would be that one.
Oh, that'd be great.
Okay. And with that, should we discuss that? What plan?
The motion? I can make the motion if you give me.
I will.
All right. I make the motion that we provide the variance for case number 11-01V. Appellant is requesting a variance from ACC 225.04.11 to allow importation of fill of less than 2 cubic feet per square foot for a property more than 1 acre in size, where the maximum allowed is less than 1/2 cubic foot of fill for a property more than 1 acre in size.
Any seconds?
I second.
Did you want to amend it?
Well, see, I was thinking about it, but we're talking about the fill, right?
Right, we're just talking about the fill.
But that fill is based on that plan that we like, right?
Right. But he wouldn't be putting the fill in there if he's just going to do the parking lot.
Yeah, well.
I mean, we're assuming, we have to trust his judgment, and we have witnesses.
Okay, so let's get a second.
Yeah.
But
Okay.
Did we get a second to the motion?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, correct.
Okay.
All right, let's go to the findings, if I can find them in there. Practical difficulty and undue hardship. What is the practical difficulty on this piece of property?
The practical difficulty is that the city has extraordinary high standards for their floodplain.
Which is good in a way, but
We are the city,
That's our goal with that.
number two, exceptional circumstances. What is the exceptional circumstances on this piece of property?
It's just barely over the size needed to.
I figured, as you said, about the size of this room, maybe a little bit bigger. Preservation of equal property rights. Would anybody with an acre or less, over 1 acre wants to also fill by 2 feet?
Well, if they're very close to an acre, yes, not an
Okay.
acre and
Half.
Well, and I think you have to consider this new city regulation is just that. It's a new regulation, and so properties, including Mr. Farian's across the street, I suppose, were built without having to comply with this particular regulation.
Is this a minimum variance?
Yes,
yes,
Absence of detriment?
none.
no.
Not of a general nature. I think maybe
That's kind
something that could be discussed by the
Now you
board.
just changed the rule.
Yeah, so
Yes,
we'll find out in the
so-
future.
So,
Go
that,
back the other way.
Yes.
Okay. Joe?
yes.
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
And yes. You got the variance. Okay, other visitors, deposition of minutes from December 14, 2010
he's going
meeting.
to continue these and bring them each time.
Oh, he's collecting them.
Unless you won't lose them.
I'll lose mine right away.
I can attach mine to my,
Yes, on the minutes. Did we approve the minutes?
no.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
You move to approve them? Second?
We could take them home,
Anything about the next meeting you want to mention?
Just that the next scheduled one is for the regular time, second Tuesday in February 8th, and we have at least one case, and depending on what Taylor Motors wants to do, maybe two.
Okay, any motion to adjourn?
Second.
Done.